There is a moment in almost every person's life that changes them forever. It usually doesn't arrive with warning. It doesn't announce itself. It often begins with silence. A message that never comes. A call that is never returned. A growing distance from someone who once made you feel important. At first you ignore it. You tell yourself they're busy. You convince yourself nothing has changed. But deep down you know something is different. You can feel it. Human beings are remarkably intuitive when it comes to emotional shifts. We notice the delayed replies. We notice the fading enthusiasm. We notice when affection slowly turns into indifference. And yet most people respond in exactly the wrong way. They chase harder. They text more. They try to become more available. They sacrifice more of themselves hoping that increased effort will restore what has been lost. But Marcus Aurelius would tell you something most people spend years learning the hard way. You cannot force another human being to value you. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot beg for genuine love. And perhaps the most painful truth of all is this. The harder you chase someone who is pulling away, the further you move away from yourself. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you abandoned your own needs because of someone else? How many hobbies have you neglected? How many friendships have you ignored? How many dreams have you postponed? How many nights have you sacrificed sleep because your mind was consumed by one person? The Stoics believe that the greatest tragedy in life is not losing someone. It is losing yourself. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He commanded armies. He ruled millions. Yet despite possessing unimaginable power, he constantly reminded himself that external things could disappear at any moment. Wealth could vanish. Reputation could collapse. Loved ones could die. Even the Roman Empire itself would one day become dust. So he trained himself daily to place his emotional stability within himself rather than in circumstances. Modern society teaches the exact opposite. We are told that another person completes us. We are told that true happiness exists only when someone chooses us. We are told that finding the one will finally make us whole. The Stoics rejected this entirely. According to Stoicism, you must first become whole on your own. Because relationships should add to your life, not become your life. This distinction changes everything. Imagine two individuals entering a relationship. The first person enters from a place of emptiness. They desperately need love, validation, and reassurance. They expect the relationship to heal old wounds and solve deep insecurities. The second person enters from a place of inner strength. They already possess purpose, discipline, self-respect, and emotional stability. They appreciate love but do not depend on it for survival. Which person do you think suffers more when the relationship ends? The answer is obvious. Dependency magnifies pain. Self-sufficiency reduces it. Epictetus taught that freedom is found when we desire only what depends on us. Read that again. Freedom is found when we desire only what depends on us. Another person's affection does not depend on you. Their loyalty does not depend on you. Their feelings do not depend on you. But your character does. Your habits do. Your mindset does. Your response does. Years ago, a man named David shared a story that perfectly illustrates this principle. For nearly 7 years he remained emotionally attached to a woman who repeatedly made it clear she did not want a committed relationship. Yet David refused to accept reality. He interpreted every small act of kindness as hope. A short conversation became proof that she secretly cared. A random text message reignited months of obsession. His entire emotional state revolved around possibilities rather than reality. He wasn't in love with who she was. He was in love with who he imagined she could become. This is another dangerous trap. Many people are not attached to a person. They are attached to a fantasy. They become addicted to potential. They fall in love with future possibilities while ignoring present reality. The Stoics warned against this kind of self-deception. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to see things exactly as they are, not as he wished them to be. Ask yourself honestly. Are you grieving the actual person? Or are you grieving the story you created about them? Because those are not the same thing. Perhaps they were inconsistent. Perhaps they repeatedly disrespected you. Perhaps they only gave attention when it benefited them. Perhaps they never truly chose you at all. Yet your mind edits reality. It highlights beautiful memories while minimizing painful truths. Psychologists call this selective memory. The Stoics called it poor judgment. And poor judgment can imprison us emotionally for years. This is why emotional detachment begins with radical honesty. See people clearly. Not through loneliness. Not through desperation. Not through nostalgia. See them exactly as they are. Because clarity destroys illusion. An illusion is often the very thing keeping you attached. But there is still one painful mistake almost everyone makes after losing someone. A mistake so common that millions remain trapped in suffering because of it. And once you recognize this pattern in your own life, you will never see heartbreak the same way again. The painful mistake most people make after losing someone is believing that closure must come from the other person. They wait for one final conversation. One final explanation. One final apology. One final message that will somehow make everything make sense. Months pass. Sometimes years. And still they wait. They replay old memories searching for hidden meanings. They analyze conversations word by word. They stalk social media hoping to find answers. They imagine scenarios in which the other person finally realizes their mistake and returns. But here's the truth Marcus Aurelius would want you to hear. Closure is not something another person gives you. Closure is something you choose. The moment you accept reality as it is rather than demanding reality become different. You become free. This brings us to the second Stoic rule. Stop seeking validation from people who cannot provide it. One of the greatest causes of emotional suffering is the desperate need to feel chosen. Deep down many people believe that if a certain person loves them then they are worthy. If that person leaves they conclude they are unworthy. This is dangerous. Because it means your self-worth no longer belongs to you. It belongs to someone else. Imagine handing a stranger the keys to your house. Now imagine handing someone the keys to your emotional well-being. Which is more dangerous? Seneca warned that the person who depends upon another for happiness becomes a slave. Think about that. A slave. Harsh words. But accurate. If someone's attention determines whether you feel valuable, then you have surrendered your inner freedom. And freedom according to Stoicism is priceless. The reality is this. People reject others for countless reasons. Sometimes they are emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they are confused. Sometimes they are dealing with wounds they have never healed. Sometimes they simply want something different. Their decision often has very little to do with your value as a human being. Yet people personalize everything. A relationship ends and they immediately ask. What is wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? Why did they choose someone else? But perhaps the better question is this. Why are you allowing one person's opinion to define your entire identity? Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the opinions of others are fleeting and unreliable. Today someone praises you. Tomorrow the same person criticizes you. If you build your identity on external approval, you will spend your life on an emotional roller coaster. Strong people do something different. They build self-respect internally. Self-respect comes from keeping promises to yourself. It comes from discipline. It comes from integrity. It comes from living according to your values even when nobody is watching. This is why many people become emotionally stronger after heartbreak. Pain forces them inward. A woman named Emily experienced this firsthand. After her divorce she believed her life was over. For nearly a year she isolated herself from friends and family. She constantly wondered why her husband had stopped loving her. One day her father asked her a question. He said, "Before you met him, who were you?" At first she didn't understand. Then he asked again. "Who were you before this relationship?" Emily realized she could barely remember. She had become so focused on being a wife that she had forgotten herself entirely. So she began rebuilding. She returned to painting. She started exercising. She traveled. She reconnected with old friends. She began journaling every morning. Something remarkable happened. The more she rebuilt her relationship with herself, the less she obsessed over the person who had left. Why? Because emotional attachment weakens when self-connection strengthens. This is one of Stoicism's most overlooked truths. You cannot lose yourself and expect to remain emotionally free. And yet even after understanding this, many people continue to struggle. Because emotions do not disappear simply because we understand them intellectually. You can know someone is wrong for you and still miss them. You can understand a relationship has ended and still feel pain. So how did the Stoics deal with overwhelming emotions without becoming cold or emotionally numb? The answer may surprise you. They did not fight their emotions. They studied them. This leads us to the third Stoic rule. Observe your emotions without obeying them. Most people live as prisoners of emotion. When sadness appears, they become sadness. When anger appears, they become anger. When loneliness appears, they immediately seek distraction. The Stoics chose another path. Observation. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about stepping back and examining his own thoughts as if he were an outside observer. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting beside a river. Leaves float by on the water. Some leaves represent joy. Some represent grief. Some represent longing. Some represent regret. You notice them. You acknowledge them. But you do not jump into the river and allow the current to carry you away. Your thoughts and emotions are the same. They arrive. They stay for a while. Then they leave. The problem is that most people attach themselves to every passing emotion. They say, "I feel lonely, therefore I must contact them. I miss them, therefore we belong together. I feel abandoned, therefore I am unlovable." But emotions are not always truth. They are experiences. Nothing more. Epictetus taught that between an event and our response there exists a space. Within that space lies our freedom. This freedom changes lives. Because when you learn to pause before reacting, you stop making decisions from desperation. You stop sending messages you later regret. You stop chasing people who have already chosen distance. You stop abandoning your dignity for temporary relief. And there is one specific Stoic exercise Marcus Aurelius practiced regularly that can completely transform the way you handle emotional pain. Once you learn it, you may never experience heartbreak in the same way again. The Stoic exercise Marcus Aurelius practiced was astonishingly simple. He called it seeing things as they truly are. Whenever strong emotions threatened to overwhelm him, he would strip away illusion and examine reality with absolute honesty. Most people never do this. Instead, they romanticize. They exaggerate. They create stories. And those stories become prisons. Imagine someone you cannot emotionally detach from. Now ask yourself these questions. Did they consistently respect me? Did they choose me freely? Did they bring peace into my life or constant anxiety? Did I feel secure around them, or was I always afraid of losing them? Was I loved for who I truly am or for what I provided? These questions are uncomfortable because they force us to confront reality. And reality often destroys fantasy. Many people remain emotionally attached not because the relationship was extraordinary but because uncertainty became addictive. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. The Stoics would simply call it dangerous. Intermittent reinforcement occurs when affection is inconsistent. One day the person is warm, affectionate and attentive. The next day they are distant, cold and unavailable. Ironically, this inconsistency often creates stronger emotional attachment than stable love. Why? Because uncertainty activates the reward system in the brain. You begin chasing emotional highs. You become addicted to possibility. You start confusing anxiety with love. Marcus Aurelius would warn against this immediately. True love should not require you to abandon your peace. Real connection should not demand the destruction of your dignity. A relationship that constantly leaves you anxious, insecure and emotionally exhausted is not necessarily profound. Sometimes it is simply unhealthy. This realization transformed the life of a man named Michael. Michael spent nearly 4 years pursuing a woman who repeatedly entered and exited his life. Every time he finally began moving on, she would reappear. A message. A phone call. A late-night conversation. Hope would return. Then she would disappear again. This cycle repeated for years. Michael believed he was fighting for love. In reality, he was fighting against reality itself. One evening, after reading the writings of Epictetus, he encountered a sentence that changed everything. If someone is not willing to share your journey willingly, do not force them to walk beside you. For the first time, Michael stopped asking why she would not choose him. Instead, he asked a different question. Why was he refusing to choose himself? That question shattered years of emotional dependency. He realized that every time he accepted inconsistency, he communicated something powerful to himself. My needs do not matter. My peace does not matter. My dignity does not matter. And once he saw this clearly, he could no longer ignore it. Within months, his entire life changed. He stopped waiting. He stopped chasing. He stopped hoping someone else would complete him. He focused inward. He exercised regularly. He rebuilt friendships. He developed new skills. He pursued long-neglected dreams. Gradually, something unexpected happened. The person who once occupied his thoughts every waking hour slowly faded into the background. Not because he forced himself to forget, but because he finally built a life too meaningful to abandon for emotional obsession. This brings us to the fourth Stoic rule. Focus exclusively on what you can control. This principle sits at the very heart of Stoicism. Epictetus taught that some things are within our control and others are not. Wisdom begins by knowing the difference. You cannot control whether someone loves you. You cannot control whether they remain loyal. You cannot control whether they miss you. You cannot control whether they return. You cannot control their feelings, choices, priorities, or actions. But you can control your response. You can control your thoughts. You can control your habits. You can control your standards. You can control your character. And you can control the direction of your life. Most suffering occurs because people invest enormous emotional energy into things they cannot influence. They obsess. They analyze. They overthink. They search endlessly for explanations. Meanwhile, they neglect the one life they actually possess. Their own. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to direct attention inward. Whenever external events disturbed him, he asked a simple question. Is this within my control? If the answer was no, he practiced letting go. Imagine how different your life would become if you applied this principle consistently. Instead of asking why they left, you would ask, how can I grow from this? Instead of asking whether they still think about you, you would ask, what kind of person do I want to become? Instead of waiting for closure, you would create it. Instead of chasing someone else's approval, you would earn your own respect. This shift is life-changing. Because your power has always existed in the present moment. Never in another person's hands. And now we arrive at the fifth and perhaps most difficult Stoic rule. Accept impermanence. Everything in life changes. Everything. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He lost friends. He witnessed betrayal, war, disease, and death. Yet throughout unimaginable hardship he continually returned to one profound truth. Nothing lasts forever. Not youth. Not beauty. Not success. Not relationships. Not even life itself. Most people resist this reality. They desperately cling to people, circumstances, and identities. But resistance only magnifies suffering. The Stoics practiced negative visualization. They intentionally reflected on loss. Not because they were pessimists, but because they understood that awareness of impermanence deepens gratitude and strengthens resilience. When you recognize that every relationship is temporary, something remarkable happens. You stop taking people for granted. You stop demanding permanence. You stop clinging. You begin appreciating. You love more fully because you understand that nothing is guaranteed. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold. It means loving without possession. Caring without dependency. Appreciating without clinging. The truly Stoic person says, "I love you deeply. I cherish our time together. But my peace does not depend on your presence. Because I refuse to surrender ownership of my soul." Perhaps that is the greatest lesson Marcus Aurelius can teach us. People will come into your life. People will leave. Some will disappoint you. Some will betray you. Some will transform you forever. But none of them should cause you to abandon yourself. Because at the end of your life the relationship you have with yourself will be the only relationship that remains from beginning to end. Guard it carefully. Strengthen it daily. Protect it relentlessly. One day you may realize that the person you struggled so desperately to hold on to was never meant to stay. And that losing them was not a punishment. It was a redirection. A necessary step toward becoming stronger, wiser, calmer, and more free. Years from now you will not remember every unanswered message. You will not remember every sleepless night. You will not remember every painful goodbye. But you will remember the moment you finally chose yourself. The moment you reclaimed your peace. The moment you stopped chasing and started living. And that moment can begin today. If this message resonated with you, comment below, "I choose peace." And if you are ready to master your emotions, strengthen your mind, and live according to timeless Stoic wisdom, make sure you subscribe, because your journey toward inner freedom is only beginning.